Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and today we're all going to take a history lesson about a chapter in Southern California history that many people don't even know existed. Many of you, of course, do know it existed because at one time Vandy Camps was really a household word here in Southern California. And today we have come to the front of the Vandy Camps Bakery building here on the corner of San Fernando Road and Fletcher, and we got a whole bunch of people standing out here, old Vandy Camps employees here.
Yes, yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it. October the 11th. Thursday, October 11th, 1990.
Right.
Okay, come on in, Louis. We're going to talk with John Vandy Camp to kind of set the family story going here. John, Vandy Camp is a very famous name here in Southern California. Explain to us how all of this got started.
Well, two of my uncles, Theodore Vandy Camp and Lawrence Frank, in 1915, opened a little storefront downtown Los Angeles with two of my aunts. And they sold Saratoga chips, which are really potato chips.
We have a picture here of your two aunts standing in front of that original
8-foot front
1915.
store. That's right.
So Vandy Camps started selling as a chip store.
That's right.
Potato chips.
They started with $200 in capital, and ultimately it blossomed into this large business that unfortunately you see in decrepitude behind you. But at one time they had some 200 stores in Southern California, a number of wonderful restaurants, and Vandy Camps was just a common name and had terrific products.
Now, we've got pictures of the various stores around town, and a lot of them had the windmills going. How did this whole Dutch theme get going?
As I gather it, of course, Vandy Camp is a Dutch name, and apparently someone who they're dealing with suggested that they really might want to establish the use of the windmill as their logo, and that became their logo, and they went to an entirely Dutch theme very early in their career. And so even some of the women working in their stores, I think, had wooden shoes, if I remember correctly, at one time. But they were dressed in costumes, and the costumes changed a little bit over the years, but still it maintained the Dutch quality. And when they got into self-service in the late, 40s and 50s, even the women who would stock the stores would be dressed in Dutch costume.
And the Dutch hats especially. That was kind of the trademark.
Yeah. And when we had the Rose Parade, for many years we had floats in the Rose Parade, and guess where the flowers came from? They were tulips from Holland.
I got you.
So.
Well, the theme worked because you had bakeries, you had restaurants, drive-in restaurants. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, right next door here, they had one of the first, well, not the first, but one of the first drive-in restaurants in this area, and it was quite successful. And their places were always noted for very reasonable prices. I mean, you could go down to Pasadena, as I did when I was a kid, would take the bus down at the end of World War II, and you get a halibut dinner that I think cost $1.10 if it cost that. Anybody
remember the halibut dinners? You had a halibut dinner?
No, but I remember them.
What did you eat in the?
But today, you know, the frozen food name, the Vandy Camp name, is now sold through a different company. They do sell halibut and fish sticks, believe it or not.
But now let's make it clear that the Vandy Camps, any Vandy Camp product that we would see in the supermarkets today, aren't associated with the original Vandy Camps company. This was kind of sold off in later years.
It got sold off by my uncles in the middle 50s, and then it went through a succession of major corporate changes until it was run into bankruptcy. But in bankruptcy, Alpha Beta, then Alpha Beta, bought the name Vandy Camps for around $500,000, as I recollect, and they bought the recipes. And so, in a way, what was being produced by these wonderful people here back many years ago is still being produced through the recipes and is still being sold in some of the Alpha Beta markets.
What kind of Vandy Camps products can you buy today?
I think you can get cinnamon rolls and chocolate chip cookies and a lot of the things. I think you'll still find them in some of the Alpha Beta stores, and they have a main bakery someplace where they produce these and have them labeled, and a label that's Vandy Camps label.
Now, this was the main bakery here. Is this where it all, and it's got the Dutch motif as well.
It certainly does, and I think they built this around 1930.
Okay, so this was kind of the headquarters of the baking operation from then until it closed.
That's right. My uncles worked here. This was their executive headquarters, and then this is where the bakery goods were produced. And the summer that I worked here in 1955, I managed to pack as many things as I could in the course of the evening. They were sent out the back door and then transported to the markets, where they'd be on the shelves fresh the next morning. I want to just say one thing, though. The hallmark of this business really was based on quality and cleanliness and a wonderful attitude among the people and management. Certainly early on, that's what this company really thrived on. We had wonderful people working with us, and we emphasized with us. My uncles always called you co-workers, as I remember, because of the notion that they were in this together, and that's really upon which they built their reputation.
What was it like to work for Vandy Camps?
Well, I'll tell you, coming from the job I had before, it was wonderful.
Now, did you all know each other, or was everybody everybody knew each other on the job?
Yes.
So you knew all these people when you were working here?
Yes.
You've got a videotape that you're going to loan us that was taken in this building back in...
86.
It shows what? Because I can't see it yet until we...
Well, it shows decorating cakes, icing cakes, and the premix, and baking bread and rolls, and some in the packing with bread. And
now those were in the last days.
yeah, it was 86, and we closed in 90.
On
So
October 11th. What was it like to go to one of the restaurants, to one of the drive-in places, to one of the windmills?
Well, I guess the best analysis or analogy today, if you were to walk into, let's think of one of the really nice coffee shops, a Coco's or something along those lines, where you have a counter usually. They had a little separate bakery area manned by Dutch girls in costumes or girls in Dutch costumes, and the menu would be fairly simple but very clean. And it was not a fancy restaurant, but it was a very middle class oriented restaurant. You asked earlier about what are they noted for? Yes, donuts. Obviously, you've heard a lot about donuts today. The donuts were terrific, but the coffee cake and the cakes and the butter cookies were absolutely, terrific. I mean, it was a very high quality place. In those days, there were two major bakery competitors here. I got kidded about mine, our Vandy Camp bakery, a lot. Helms was the other one. You all remember Helms, because Helms had the trucks that come by the neighborhoods in the afternoon. Helms and Vandy Camps were great competitors, especially back in the 40s and 50s.
Well, isn't it interesting that you brought up Helms, because the old Helms building over on, Washington, was restored when it went out of business, and they've made it into this wonderful building that's filled with all kinds of antique shops and...
The Jazz Bakery is there.
The Jazz Bakery. Have y'all ever been over to you're allowed to go to the Helms building, aren't you? You slip in there every once in...
I haven't gone there.
But you know what we're talking
Yes.
about.
Oh, yes.
Because it's been restored and has a whole new life, even though it's not a bakery anymore. The reason we're kind of here today reminiscing about Vandy Camps is that this building, the old headquarters, is not really long for this world, I think. The developer is coming in here, and I think they're going to pretty well take it down. You're shaking your head.
Gosh, I hate to think of it.
Yeah.
But if something better goes up, it's a waste of land if it's not being really put to use.
Well, hopefully, though, Ken, you're from the Los Angeles Conservancy. Right. You all have kind of an alternative that could maybe happen here.
Well, what's proposed here right now is to demolish the entire Vandy Camps Bakery building and build a very large home base, home improvement store, and a Burger King outlet. Now, there is a Burger King just across the street, and there are some Home Depots 2 miles away in each direction. The Conservancy has been hoping for some time to have the opportunity to arrange for a reuse of this site, using perhaps the Helms Bakery building as a model, or the Citadel down in the City of Commerce, which was the old Uniroyal plant that's now been transformed into an outlet center, but either to transform this into retail or even possibly reused for housing. Artist loft type space, as has been done at the brewery over in Lincoln Heights near the 5 freeway.
Something positive, because it's obviously it's a well-built building, because even though it's deserted, was this a well-built building? Let's see a show of hands. You think it was well built?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So it was well built. The facade here is absolutely beautiful, and it really, especially like you say, when you think about what happened at Helms, the scenario could very well work here.
Absolutely. The problem has been economics. Unfortunately, the owner has been asking $8 million for the property, and it's difficult to compete with a big box retail use like home base, which generates that kind of sales. Unfortunately, if you look at the property, though, it's suffered what in the preservation community we call demolition by neglect. It's been allowed to deteriorate. There's graffiti.
So they can use that as an excuse for tearing it down.
Exactly, and that's a common process. There's been no attempt to maintain the property, and as a result, there are some immediate neighbors anyway who would like to see it torn.
At least today we have paid tribute to the men and women for whom Vandy Camps was really their life and a wonderful part of their life. And for all of you watching out there who remember Vandy Camps, this will be a little nostalgic touch with your past. For all those newcomers to Los Angeles who never knew this existed, never knew this was part of life in Southern California, we have kind of gone back in time and looked again and let everybody know that this was here and it was part of living in Southern California. Vandy Camps really was a household word, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, it was.
We're in the San Gabriel Valley, we're in the little town of Arcadia, and look what we found. Right here on the corner of Huntington Drive and Santa Anita Avenue, there's one of the original Vandy Camps windmills, which means that this corner was once the home of one of the Vandy Camps bakeries or restaurants or something. Vandy Camps was here. Charles Phoenix from the Los Angeles Conservancy, you've written books on architecture in Los Angeles and you're interested in this sort of thing. Tell us about the history of this corner.
Well, this is actually the last incarnation of the coffee shops and bakeries that Vandy Camps was into during, well, actually between the 20s and the 60s. They were in the coffee shop and bakery business, and they had retail stores. This is the last example standing in Southern California that still has the windmill intact.
I tell you what, we have a picture now of a collection of some of the old windmills. Most of them even had the windmill taken off, but the structures where they had been removed when they were tearing down all the old structures. It's like looking at a windmill graveyard when they destroyed all of these things. These windmills, these little restaurants and bakeries once dotted Southern California. They were everywhere. Now this is the last one, and it almost wasn't here.
Well, it's the last one with the windmill. There's a few of them that are windmill-less, but we really don't count those because, I mean, this is the complete look. It's still here. We saved it, actually, so we're very glad about that because Denny's, when they were doing their remodel recently, they wanted to take the windmill off the building, and we got a hold of them and said, you know, not a great idea. And
who is we?
The Modern Committee of the Los Angeles Conservancy, the Route 66 Association, and the Save the Windmill group.
And a lot of people here in Arcadia who had grown up with this being a landmark.
Yeah, a lot of people, once we got the ball rolling and told them that we were going to be here, a lot of local people came and supported this. And, you know, local people have something to say about local architecture, and naturally Denny's Corporation, you know, didn't ask anybody here on the streets, do you think we should take it down or not? And once we came around and said, hey, you know, what are you doing here? And kind of had a little protest. And
what did you do, march on Denny's? Were the women wearing the Did you wear the Dutch hats and all that?
I actually didn't, but a few people did. We all dressed in Dutch blue and white, and we created quite a spectacle here on the corner, and people were honking their horns, and we had signs that said, "Save the windmill," and all that.